Probably the single most multi-layered, sophisticated diplomatic troll in your lifetime or mine was Marco Rubio wearing the famous Maduro tracksuit. This is, of course, the tracksuit that Maduro was thrown into after we black-bagged him in the dark of night. Now he's in a prison cell. Marco Rubio wore this tracksuit on his way to China, a signal to China that we're about to take your last remaining friend in our hemisphere, which would be Cuba. Now, at the time that the American administration was meeting with the Chinese, the CIA was meeting with the Cuban intelligence agency in Havana. Never a great thing when the CIA pays you a visit. And I'd love to have heard what was being explained here in a room that I can only describe as the cafeteria at Jurassic Park. That's what this looks like to me. I don't know what it looks like to you, but way to go. At least they had electricity. But whenever the CIA pays you a visit, that's not a good thing. Marco Rubio, obviously, and the CIA have tough relations with Cuba. Marco Rubio's entire family had to flee communism, and the CIA was humiliated during the Bay of Pigs, something they'll never get over. Same thing with Iran, and you can see the way that that's going. Obviously, the Iranian Revolution was a humiliation to the CIA. They don't forget these kind of things. The agency doesn't forget these kind of things. Donald Trump saying that everything went dark in Caracas right before we grabbed the dictator of Venezuela, and now everything's gone dark in Cuba. And they have had multiple rolling total blackouts as the total embargo on Cuba. They can't get fuel. And this morning, Marco Rubio said, your time is over here as a nation. Or as a leader, at the least as a leadership. What do you think about Cuba becoming a 51st state? I don't know. The more than 6 decades, the Cuban regime has been leading sponsor of radical leftism and third worldism in the United States. The State Department is exposing their full history of Cuban espionage and subversion in our country. The American people deserve to know. So where does this report lead to that Marco Rubio posted? And what is the main objective here? The main objective here, and I encourage you to go read the report. I've just shown you the tweet and where it is on the Secretary of State website, the capital of 21st century communism, Cuba. The point of this is to soften the American people and to begin to lay the groundwork for the total and complete overthrow and takeover of Cuba. That's what's going on here. State Department report, Cuba foments far left-wing extremism and runs spy rings in the United States. The State Department published a report on Monday accusing the Cuba of fomenting left-wing terrorism and extremism in the United States and building a sophisticated espionage and influence network focused on penetrating and undermining U.S. interests. The report finds for nearly 7 decades, the Cuban regime has played an indispensable role in nearly every notable far-left insurgency, revolution, and militant movement across the United States and the Western Hemisphere, the State Department said. In a meeting Wednesday about far-left extremism, the officials from more than 60 countries, Secretary Marco Rubio made a similar point. The Cuban regime's sprawling intelligence and ideological networks have built up far left in our country and our hemisphere, he says. It remains inextricably linked. And so the State Department is publishing this report on the heels of saying that the Castros need to be arrested and charging the Castros. This is a very thorough report. You can see the chapters here. And what they're going to begin charging the Cuban leadership with is terrorist charges. And, Guantanamo Bay is in Cuba, so you wouldn't even have to move them that far. But the point of blackbagging one of the Castros, and Raul Castro is who they charged, this is the brother of Fidel Castro, the point of charging him would be to prove to the Cuban people that there is no more power in their government. So they can't provide food, they can't provide basic necessities, they can't provide security. These are like the functions of government. They can't pave the roads. You don't have any money. You don't have any hope. You don't have any capital. You don't have any firearms. You don't have anything. You don't even have running water or electricity. So your government's failed you, and now your government has no power. The brother of the dictator for the last 60 years, he's in a prison somewhere in America, right? So you take all the venom, all the energy out of the Castro name, and then the people of Cuba rise up. I don't know exactly what the end result is. The report makes the case that Cuba is a failed state economically and masks one of the most effective foreign intelligence and influence operations in modern history. Comprehensive, the report uses public sources and does not make any new disclosures about such activities. The 64-page document goes through the historical accounts of Cuba's efforts to support guerrilla movements and his own version of Marxism forged around fundamental hatred of the United States. Oh boy. So what are they saying? What is the groundwork that's being laid here is for the overthrow of Cuba. That's what's going on. You can see this. Some of the organizations, like the Armed Queers of Salt Lake City, this is a violent Antifa group that some say were connected to Tyler Robinson. They just been to Cuba. And were training in Cuba. Tyler Robinson, of course, used Antifa messaging, and Antifa stands for anti-fascist. It's a communist movement, and he engraved it on the bullets. I don't know why it's so hard for people to connect the dots here, but I guess the brain rot goes deep. If you want to go after far left-wing terrorists, you can find an enormous number of items. Like, for instance, Karen Bass, who went to Cuba to go and train with Marxists. Let's see here. She is literally traveled to Cuba to go be part of a communist brigade. Goodness gracious. There you go. Karen Bass, she's now the mayor of Los Angeles. This is the kind of subterfuge that they engage in the country. Fidel Castro famously wanted to launch a nuclear weapon. The reason why the Soviets wouldn't give him nukes is because Fidel Castro, they had very credible intelligence, meaning Fidel Castro saying it, that he's going to use the nukes to bomb New York City. And that's what he would do. And he just doesn't care what happens to Cuba, just as long as he gets rid of New York City, just as long as he nukes America. Read this report. A number of American support groups like Antifa, National Lawyers Guild, the Green Hat people at Antifa riots, have long running ties to the Cuban regime. Support for anti-American activities and terrorism. Chapters across nearly all law programs at taxpayer-funded American universities. They teach future American lawyers how to subvert the legal system to help far-left terrorists use unethical tactics. We just had a far-left terrorist bombing in New York City, attacking the FBI and ICE building. Below are excerpts from Rubio's report that make extremely strong case to forcibly removing the communist regime in Cuba. Cuba becomes the 51st state. It's your patriotic duty to remember that I was the first to suggest that Trump take annexing Cuba seriously. Okay. Make no mistake, despicable regime in Cuba is a national security threat. So this is what they're doing. Third worldism is real. Nice. Now I love that terminology. To bring the third world and third world thinking to our enlightened society is actually a weapon of mass destruction. Fidel Castro's communist state was crafted around singular goal of Marxist debasement of the United States. For 7 decades, the Cuban regime held behind the ideological underpinnings of third worldism and subversive organizing. Third worldism, I love that terminology. Cuba's biggest export is third world radicalism, no more. Feed me the Cuban regime. Feed me Havana. Revenge is a dish best served with hellfire missiles. Everybody would love taking out Cuba. Man, everyone would love it. Sorry, everyone would just love it. They like so many people, especially around where I live, and maybe this is just bias because I live in a city that has a lot of Cubans in it. I live in Tampa, Florida. Florida has a lot of Cubans in it. They're so right-wing. They're more right-wing than any right-wing person you've ever met from the deep, dark South, right? Cubans are extremely right-wing and black-pilled against communism. And what would also blackpill you against communism is going and seeing communism. We did that, actually, and we need to go back. We need to go back to Cuba, and we need to show people what the reality is there on the ground. Enough of this Hassan Piker, going there and streaming from the only hotel that has energy and saying that people just love it. It's just island vibes. Enough of that. We're gonna we need to actually go. We need to actually go and show the people what's going what the reality is. It's your boy Benny. Like, share, and subscribe. Invasion of Cuba, dude. I think it'd be very popular. I think it'd win Marco Rubio or JD Vance or whoever Latino votes for the rest of all time. That's what I think. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section. It's your boy Benny.